The echo of tomorrow. You've been taught to attract what you want, attract success, attract love, attract confidence, as if these things exist somewhere outside you, waiting to be pulled in. That belief is the trap. Because the moment you try to attract something, you silently admit it is absent. And the brain organizes reality around absence with ruthless efficiency. What you focus on missing becomes what you continue to experience. This is why effort often backfires, why chasing feels exhausting, why the harder you try to become someone, the further that version of you seems to move away. You are not here to attract. You are here to remember. Before conditioning, before doubt, before the identity you learned to perform to survive. Your nervous system already knows what confidence feels like. Your body already recognizes abundance, connection, authority, calm. These states are not foreign, they are suppressed. Life didn't take them from you. You buried them to adapt. Every belief you adopted was once a solution. Every limitation once protected you. But what protected you then is restricting you now. Remembering is not passive. It is strategic. It means withdrawing energy from who you've been rehearsing. It means dissolving the identity that depends on validation, timing, permission. It means allowing your behavior to align with a self-image that no longer negotiates its worth. This audiobook will not teach you how to want more. It will teach you how to stop forgetting who you already are. You'll learn why attraction language keeps you locked in effort, why discipline without identity collapses, and how to access the internal states that make external change inevitable. When you stop trying to attract, reality doesn't disappear. It reorganizes. Not because you asked, but because you finally remembered. Chapter 1. The Fatigue of the Chase. Consider the sheer weight of what you call ambition.
For most people, the pursuit of a better life feels like a frantic run on a treadmill. You are sweating and straining. You are pushing against gravity with every ounce of your will. You look forward and see the object of your desire shimmering in the distance. You reach out for it, but it stays just out of grasp. This is the fatigue of the chase. It is the defining characteristic of the modern seeker. We have been conditioned to believe that our goals are external things that must be hunted down and captured. This mindset creates a subtle but devastating psychological fracture. When you view your future as something you must attract, you are fundamentally admitting that it is not currently yours. You are reinforcing a state of separation. Every time you visualize your goal with a sense of desperate longing, you are telling your brain that you are incomplete. You are practicing the feeling of absence. This is why you are tired. You are carrying the heavy burden of a reality where you are constantly lacking what you need. Let us dismantle this perspective and replace it with something far more stable. Imagine for a moment that time is not merely a linear road where you walk blindly into the dark. Imagine instead that your timeline is a landscape that already exists in its entirety. The valley you are standing in is your present. The mountain peak you wish to climb is your future. The peak is not missing. It is simply waiting for you to walk the path. It does not need to be attracted. It needs to be arrived at. This shift changes everything. You stop trying to pull the mountain toward you with mental gymnastics and simply start walking. This is the art of remembering the future. When you remember something, you do not strain, you do not doubt, you do not hope. You simply know. Think about how you feel when you go to the grocery store to buy milk. You do not stand in your kitchen and try to manifest the milk. You do not create a vision board of the dairy aisle.
You simply remember that the store has milk, and you remember the route to get there. You act with total certainty. There is no emotional turbulence. There is no fatigue. There is only the logical sequence of steps required to retrieve what you know is there. We must apply this same banality to your highest ambitions. The fatigue vanishes when you stop treating your goals as miracles and start treating them as memories. The psychology behind this is grounded and practical. When you convince your subconscious mind that an outcome is inevitable, you lower your stress hormones. You clear the fog of anxiety. Your brain stops scanning for threats and reasons why you might fail. Instead, it begins to scan for the logistical steps required to reach the destination. This is the state of the architect who has already drawn the blueprints. The building does not exist in the physical world yet. The lot is empty. There is mud and dirt. But the architect is not anxious. He does not run around frantically trying to attract a building. He looks at the mud and he remembers the design. He knows exactly where the foundation will be poured. He knows how the steel will rise. He operates with the calm authority of someone who has seen the end from the beginning. You must become the architect of your own timeline. Stop chasing the ghost of a better life. Stop screaming into the void, hoping for an echo. Sit down in the quiet of your own mind and look forward with the same familiarity you use when looking back. See the outcome not as a wish, but as a fact that is simply waiting for the calendar to catch up. The exhaustion you feel is the friction of doubt. Remove the doubt and you remove the friction. You are not becoming something new. You are merely remembering who you are inevitably going to be. If you are ready to stop chasing and start walking with certainty, please support this work by clicking the subscribe button now. Chapter 2. The Inverted Timeline. Consider the way you have been conditioned to view time. You likely perceive it as a linear progression. You stand in the present moment, looking backward at a solidified past and forward into a foggy, volatile future. This perspective is the primary source of your fatigue. It creates a perpetual distance between where you are and where you intend to be. That distance is filled with variables, and those variables breed anxiety. You feel you must chase the future because you perceive it as something that is running away from you. Let us dismantle this framework and replace it with the concept of the inverted timeline. This approach requires you to shift your psychological vantage point. Instead of standing in today and looking forward, you must mentally position yourself at the end of the timeline and look backward. You are not striving to achieve a goal. You are simply recalling how it happened. There is a profound difference in the neural weight of these two perspectives. When you imagine a future you want, you are operating in the realm of hope. Hope is fragile. It implies the possibility of failure. It is wispy and ethereal. However, when you remember a past event, it feels solid. It has texture. It has mass. You do not hope you ate breakfast this morning. You know you did. You do not strive to recall your own name. It is a fixed data point in your reality. The shift from attracting to remembering is the act of treating your future objectives with the same cognitive certainty you treat your past memories. This is not about magic or bending the laws of physics. It is about how you utilize your cognitive resources. When the human brain perceives an outcome as uncertain, it triggers a stress response. It hesitates. It conserves energy to protect you from disappointment.
It scans the environment for threats that might stop you. This is the friction you feel when you try to manifest or attract. You are fighting your own biology.
However, when you engage in the mental act of remembering the future, you bypass that resistance. You tell your brain that the outcome is a resolved fact. It is a log entry in your personal history that simply has not been processed by your physical senses yet. When the brain accepts the destination as a certainty, it stops scanning for threats and starts scanning for paths. It switches from a defensive posture to a logistical one. Imagine reading a biography of a great historical figure. When you read about their early struggles, you do not feel anxiety for them. You do not worry if they will make it. You are holding the book. You know the ending. You know their success is inevitable because it is already written on the last page. The inverted timeline invites you to view your own life with that same detached confidence. You are currently in the early chapters of your own biography. The struggles you face today are not evidence that you might fail. They are simply the plot points required to get you to the ending you have already accepted. This mental shift changes your internal dialogue. You stop asking yourself if it will happen. You stop looking for signs. Instead, you ask purely functional questions. You ask yourself how you did it. You look back from that imagined future point, and you reverse engineer the steps. You realize that to get to that end state, you must have taken specific actions. You must have acquired specific skills. You must have endured specific hardships. By remembering the future, you transform the unknown into a checklist. The emotional volatility of the chase evaporates. You are no longer a hunter running through the dark, hoping to catch a glimpse of your prey. You are an architect walking through a building that has already been blueprinted. The structure exists in your mind with absolute clarity. Your physical labor is now just the process of laying the bricks to match the design. Stop trying to pull the future toward you. That implies it is heavy and you are weak. Instead, assume the position of the person who has already finished the race. Look back at the track. See the hurdles you cleared. Acknowledge the effort it took. Feel the relief of the finish line before you even take the first step. When you operate from this state of remembering, you do not need to attract anything. You simply proceed with the quiet calm of someone who has read the final page and knows exactly how the story ends. Chapter 3. The Archive of Unlived Days. Picture a vast and silent room. The ceilings are high and lost in shadow. The walls are lined with rows of mahogany shelves that stretch endlessly into the distance. The air here is cool and still. It smells of parchment and binding glue. You are walking through the archive of unlived days. This is not a fantasy. This is a mental landscape where the linear progression of time folds in on itself. Usually we stand on the precipice of the present and peer anxiously into the dark void of the future. We see that void as empty space that must be filled. We view it as a blank canvas that requires our constant and exhausting effort to paint. That perspective is what causes the fatigue of the chase. It convinces you that the future is fragile and dependent entirely on your desperate hustle. But here in the archive, the perspective is reversed. The books on these shelves represent days that have not yet physically occurred, but are already cognitively complete. Pull one down. Feel the weight of it in your hands. It is heavy. It is solid. Open the cover. Inside, you do not find a list of hopes or a collection of desires. You find a record of events. You see the business you built. You see the body you sculpted. You see the relationships you nurtured.
The ink is dry. The story is told. When you stop trying to attract and start trying to remember, you hack the deepest parts of your psychology. Think about the difference between imagination and memory.
Imagination is often wispy. It is like smoke. It changes shape when the wind blows. It is unstable. Memory is different. Memory is heavy. It has texture. It has gravity. You do not struggle to believe in your past. You simply know it happened. The strategy here is to borrow that authority of memory and apply it to your ambitions. When you try to attract something, you are fundamentally operating from a position of lack. You are standing here saying that the object of your desire is over there. That gap creates tension. It creates doubt. Your brain constantly scans for evidence that you might fail. However, when you choose to remember a future event, you dissolve that gap. You tell your mind that the outcome is not a variable. It is a constant. This is not about mystical manifestation. It is about emotional regulation and behavioral priming. If you are certain of the destination, you walk differently. You make decisions with the confidence of someone who has already seen the result. A man who hopes to win a race runs with fear. A man who remembers winning the race runs with precision. This archive allows you to rest. It allows you to put down the heavy burden of anxiety. If you believe the file exists in the archive, you do not need to beg the world for it. You do not need to obsess over every small obstacle. Obstacles are just plot points in a story that has a guaranteed conclusion. Walk through the aisles of your own potential. Find the volume that contains the version of life you have been chasing. Take it off the shelf. Claim it. Do not look at it as a possibility. Look at it as a history that is waiting to be reenacted. The fatigue you feel comes from the uncertainty. It comes from the constant question of whether or not you will make it. The archive of unlived days answers that question with a silent and resounding yes. It has already happened in the architecture of your mind. Now you are simply moving your physical body through the necessary motions to catch up with where your mind has already settled. Leave the concept of attraction behind. It is too passive. It is too weak. Replace it with the ironclad solidity of memory. The future is not something you catch. It is something you recall. Chapter 4. Sensory Recall of the Unseen. Consider the difference between building a house from scratch and walking through a home that has stood for a century. The builder is anxious. He worries about the foundation, the materials, and the weather. He is constantly exerting effort to force something into existence that does not yet be. This is the state of attraction. It is a state of lack. It implies that the object of your desire is absent and must be pulled across a great distance to reach you. Now consider the resident of the old home. He walks the halls in the dark. He knows exactly where the floorboards creak. He knows the scent of the cedar closet and the cold texture of the brass doorknob. He does not try to attract the house. He simply inhabits it. He remembers it even when he is away from it. This is the shift we must make. We are moving from the anxiety of creation to the certainty of memory. In the previous chapter, we established that the timeline is inverted. The outcome you seek exists in the archive of your potential futures. It is not a fantasy to be constructed. It is a memory to be recalled. But how do you remember something that has not physically occurred? You do it through sensory recall of the unseen. The human brain is a magnificent but easily deceived instrument. Neurologically, it struggles to distinguish between a deeply ingrained memory and a vividly constructed simulation.
When you remember your childhood home, you do not see a flat picture. You engage a symphony of senses. You feel the scratch of the carpet. You smell the Sunday dinner. You hear the specific hum of the refrigerator.
These sensory inputs are what convince the brain that the past was real. To anchor the future, you must use the same mechanism. Most people visualize like they are watching a television screen. They see themselves from the outside getting the promotion or crossing the finish line. This keeps the reality external. It keeps it separate from you. To remember the future, you must step inside the frame. Close your eyes and test this. Do not see the car you want to drive. Instead, feel the weight of the key in your palm. Is the metal cold or warm? Run your thumb over the ridges of the ignition. Smell the leather of the seat. Hear the sound of the door closing, that solid thud that isolates you from the noise of the street. This is not imagination. This is data entry. You are encoding a new memory into your neural architecture. When you engage in this sensory recall, you are hacking your reticular activating system. This is the filter in your brain that decides what is important. By replaying these sensory details, you tag this future reality as high-priority data. You are telling your mind that this has already happened, or at the very least, that it is familiar territory. The fatigue of the chase vanishes when you operate this way. You are no longer running after a fleeing target. You are simply sitting in a room you know well. You are recalling the conversation you had when you signed the contract. You are remembering the taste of the champagne at the wedding. You are remembering the relief of the debt being paid. This brings a profound physiological change. The anxiety of the unknown is replaced by the calm of the known. You stop desperate scrambling, because one does not scramble for what one already possesses. You walk differently when you are on familiar ground. You speak with authority when you are recounting a fact rather than proposing a theory. This is the secret of the inverted timeline. You are not moving toward the future, you are remembering it into the present. The sensory details are the coordinates. Every time you engage the smell, the touch, and the sound of that unlived day, you pull it out of the archive and overlay it onto your current reality. Do not try to attract. Do not beg. Do not hope. Simply close your eyes and remember. The file is already there. You just need to read it with your fingers and your breath and your skin, until the physical world has no choice but to align with the map you have already drawn. Chapter 5. The Emotion of Done. There is a distinct weight to a task that is finished. Think of the last time you completed a long and difficult project. Think of the moment you set down your tools or closed the final document. In that second, the chemistry of your body changed. The adrenaline of the effort evaporated and was replaced by a heavy and settled silence. You were no longer striving. You were no longer calculating the odds of success or failure. You were simply witnessing a fact. The work was done. This is the emotional signature we are looking for. In the previous chapters, we explored the fatigue of the chase. We identified that the act of wanting emphasizes the lack of the object. When you stand in a state of desperate attraction, you are constantly broadcasting a signal of absence to your own psychology. You are telling your brain that the goal is missing, that it is far away, and that you must fight to bridge the gap. This state creates anxiety. It keeps your nervous system in a high-alert mode of scarcity. To remember the future, you must abandon the frequency of hope and step into the frequency of the aftermath. Imagine for a moment that the outcome is already secured.
It is not a possibility you are gambling on. It is a memory you are recalling from next year. How does that change your posture right now? A person who is hoping to be hired walks into the interview room with a trembling frequency of performance. They are trying to prove their worth. They are terrified of making a mistake. Now consider the person who has already been hired. They have signed the contract. They are simply walking into the room to meet the team. Their shoulders are down. Their breathing is deep and rhythmic. They speak with the authority of someone who belongs in the room. They are not trying to attract the job. They are inhabiting the role. This is the emotion of done. It is not manic excitement. It is not the high energy of a celebration. It is much quieter than that. It is the profound sense of relief that comes when the question mark is removed from the sentence of your life. It is the feeling of taking off tight shoes at the end of a long day. It is neutrality. When you operate from this state, you stop acting out of desperation. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop repelling opportunities with the stench of neediness. Instead, you move with the calm efficiency of someone who has read the end of the book and knows exactly how the plot resolves. You are not guessing. You are not wishing. You are simply walking the path that leads to the conclusion you have already accepted as truth. This shift does something powerful to your cognitive baseline. When the brain accepts an outcome as inevitable, it stops wasting energy on worry. It reallocates those resources toward execution. You become more observant. You notice open doors that the anxious mind would have missed. You speak with a clarity that commands respect. You take calculated risks because you are operating from a foundation of safety rather than a pit of fear. The challenge here is to separate the feeling of desire from the feeling of having. Desire feels like fire. It burns. It is restless. Having feels like earth. It is solid. It is immovable. To practice the archive of unlived days, you must cultivate this earthen sensation. You must feel the solidity of the future beneath your feet before you physically arrive there. Do not try to trick yourself with fantasy. This is about emotional regulation. It is about calming the waters of the mind so that it reflects the future clearly. When you can sit in an empty room and feel the relief of the victory as if it happened yesterday, you have unlocked the mechanism. You have stopped chasing the echo. You have become the source of the sound. You are no longer waiting for the future to arrive. You are simply remembering where you left it. Chapter 6. The Lag of the Mirror. Imagine standing before a mirror that stretches as wide as the horizon. In a normal reflection, the feedback is instant. You raise your hand, and the figure in the glass raises its hand in perfect unison. There is no gap between your action and the evidence of that action. This immediacy is what we have been trained to expect from the world. We make a decision, we exert effort, and we demand that the reflection of our lives shifts to match us immediately. But the reality you navigate is not a standard mirror. It behaves more like the night sky. When you look up at a star, you are not seeing it as it exists this very second. You are seeing the light it emitted thousands of years ago. That star might have already collapsed or exploded, yet to your eyes, it burns bright and steady. You are looking at a ghost. You are witnessing the past. This is the lag of the mirror. It is the critical delay between the moment you internally shift and the moment your external reality reorganizes itself to match that shift. This lag is where most people abandon their ambition. They engage in the work of remembering their future success. They cultivate the discipline, the habits, and the certainty we discussed in the previous chapters. They change the cause. But then they open their eyes and look at their bank accounts, their relationships, or their physical health, and they see the old reflection staring back. Because the reflection has not changed yet,
They assume the internal shift was a lie. They think, I am doing the work, but nothing is happening. They panic. They revert to their old behaviors. They stop smiling at the mirror because the mirror did not smile back instantly. You must understand that your current circumstances are nothing more than the delayed reflection of who you used to be. The life you are living today is the residual effect of choices you made 3 years ago. It is the light of a dead star. It feels solid, but it is actually an echo. When you finally stop trying to attract and start remembering the future, you are essentially lighting a new fire. You have changed the source code, but the signal needs time to travel through the density of the material world. If you understand the physics of this lag, you do not panic when the external world contradicts your internal state. You understand that the mirror is simply slow. It has a high latency. The old reality is still playing out its final scenes, while the new reality is loading in the background. This is why the concept of remembering is so much more potent than hoping. Hope looks at the mirror and begs it to change. Hope requires external validation to sustain itself. If the mirror does not change, hope dies. Memory operates differently. If you remember that you placed your keys on the table, you do not panic just because you are currently standing in the bedroom. You know the keys are there. You simply have to walk the distance to retrieve them. The time it takes to walk from the bedroom to the table is not proof that the keys are missing. It is just the necessary transit time. In this phase of the inverted timeline, you must walk through the days where your reality contradicts your identity without flinching. You must look at the old reflection, the lack of resources, or the absence of the goal, and recognize it as historical data, not current truth. You treat the present moment not as a final verdict, but as a report on your past performance. You are no longer reacting to what you see. You are acting on what you know. You hold the new posture. You maintain the new standard. You do not lower your hand just because the reflection is lagging. You wait with the calm, absolute certainty of someone who knows how light travels. You know that the image in the glass has no choice. It is bound by the laws of cause and effect. It must update. It is simply traveling toward you. Chapter 7. Ignoring the Plot Twists. Imagine you are sitting in a comfortable leather chair in a quiet library, holding a thick biography of a historical figure you admire. You know this person changed the world. You know they died wealthy and respected. Their success is a matter of record. It is a fixed point in history. You open the book to chapter 4. In this chapter, the protagonist loses everything. Their business burns down. Their allies betray them. They are left with nothing but debt and a ruined reputation. As you read these pages, do you feel panic? Does your heart race with the fear that they might not recover? Do you close the book in despair, thinking that the story ends here in tragedy? Of course not. You turn the page with a calm and detached curiosity. You are not anxious because you know the ending. The ending is already written. The disaster in chapter 4 is not a termination. It is merely a plot twist. It is the necessary tension that makes the eventual victory meaningful. It is simply context. Now apply this inverted timeline to your own life.
You have already visited the archive of unlived days. You have recalled the sensory details of your destination. You have established the memory of your future. The outcome is a known fact in your psychology. It sits in your mind with the weight of history. It is done. Then you open your eyes. You step out into the physical world, and the immediate reality contradicts you. The bank balance is low. The interview goes poorly.
The deal falls apart. The plot twists. If you are operating from the mindset of attraction, these moments destroy you. They look like evidence that your efforts are failing. They act as proof that you are deluding yourself. Panic sets in. You scramble to fix the external world. You doubt the process, and you abandon the path. But if you are remembering a future that has already happened, your reaction is entirely different. You look at the setback, and you recognize it as a narrative beat. You say to yourself, "This is the part where things get complicated before the resolution. This is the chapter where the hero is tested. This is the dark night of the soul before the dawn." This shift in perspective is the ultimate form of emotional regulation. It removes the fragility from your ambition. When you view the present moment as the final verdict, you are a victim of circumstance. When you view the present moment as a bridge in a story that has already concluded, you become resilient. Think about the psychological fortitude this creates. The person who believes they are fighting for a mere possibility is easily discouraged. The person who believes they are walking through a memory of a difficult chapter is relentless. You do not quit reading a book because the character hits a wall. You keep reading because you know the wall comes down in the next chapter. This is not about ignoring reality or pretending the problem does not exist. It is about emotional placement. You handle the crisis. You solve the problem. You pay the debt. But you do so without the existential dread that this is the end of the line. You handle the plot twist with the competence of someone who has already read the sequel. The physical world is dense and heavy. It moves slower than your mind. The plot twists are often just the friction of that movement. They are the debris of the old story clearing out to make way for the new one. They are the rearranging of the stage sets behind the curtain. So when the unexpected happens, do not reset your internal timeline. Do not assume the memory was false. Do not look for signs that you were wrong. Treat the obstacle with the same casual confidence you give to the protagonist in the biography. Acknowledge the twist. Respect the difficulty. But never forget that you have already seen the last page. The resolution is not in question. Only the route is being negotiated. Stay in the narrative of the completed work and let the chapters unfold as they must. Chapter 8. The Script in Your Pocket. Imagine standing center stage under a blinding spotlight. The theater is silent and you are sweating. You are terrified because you believe you have to invent the next line of dialogue right now. You think the plot depends entirely on how hard you concentrate in this exact second. You are frantically looking for cues and hoping the audience approves of your performance. This is what it feels like to try and attract a future. It is a performance born of anxiety and improvisation. It is exhausting because you believe the ending has not been written yet. You feel the weight of creation resting entirely on your shoulders in every single moment. But now I want you to freeze that image. Stop the panic. Reach into your coat pocket. Your fingers brush against the rough texture of folded paper. You pull it out and smooth it over.
It is the script. The entire third act is already there. The dialogue is typed in black ink. The climax is resolved. The curtain call is scheduled. You were never supposed to improvise. You were only supposed to deliver the lines. This is the fundamental shift from attracting to remembering. When you try to attract something, you are operating from a place of lack. You are telling your brain that the object of your desire is outside of you, and you must drag it in with mental effort. It implies distance. It implies a void that must be filled. But remembering implies ownership.
You cannot remember something you never had. You cannot recall a memory that is not already filed away in your internal archive. Consider the psychological difference between hoping for a package to arrive and remembering where you put your keys. When you hope for a package, you are dependent on external factors. You check the tracking number. You look out the window. You worry about the delivery truck. But when you remember where you put your keys, you are simply retracing your steps. You know the keys exist. You know they are in the house. The outcome is not in question. The only variable is the time it takes you to walk from the living room to the kitchen. This is the state of mind we call the script in your pocket. It is a perspective where you view your goals not as wishes, but as logistical inevitabilities. You treat your ambition like a history that has already happened, and you are currently just living through the flashback. Think about rewatching your favorite film. When the hero is trapped in a burning building or dangling from a cliff, you do not feel genuine fear. You do not worry that the movie might end right there. You feel a sense of calm anticipation. You know he survives. You know he gets the girl. You know the villain loses. You have seen the ending before. You are simply watching the plot twists to see how the director connects the dots. That is the emotional signature of done. It is not excitement. Excitement is unstable. Excitement suggests you are surprised by your success. The feeling you want is the calm familiarity of a rerun. You are watching your life unfold with the cool detachment of an actor who has read the script and knows exactly how the scene ends. When you stop trying to force the world to bend to your will and start walking with the confidence of someone who has read the final page, the world responds differently. You stop reacting to obstacles as if they are tragedies. You see them as necessary plot points. You stop asking if it will happen. You start observing how it is happening. The ink is dry. The pages are stapled. Stop improvising. Stop begging the audience for applause. Just read the lines. The ending is already in your pocket. Chapter 9. Doubt as Amnesia. Let us consider the moment the fog rolls in. You have done the internal work. You have established the sensory recall of the unseen. You have touched the archive of your unlived days. Yet here you are on a Tuesday afternoon, looking at a stagnant situation and feeling a cold spike of fear in your chest. The illusion of the present moment becomes so heavy and so convincing that it snaps you out of your alignment. You begin to question everything. You ask yourself if you were foolish to believe in a different outcome. You look at the lack of evidence and you call this feeling doubt. But in the context of an inverted timeline, doubt is a misnomer. Doubt implies that the future is an open question, dependent on chance or luck. If you truly inhabit the perspective that the future has already occurred, then what you are experiencing is not uncertainty. It is amnesia. Think about how memory works in your standard daily life. You might walk into a room and suddenly forget why you entered. For a split second, you stand there, confused and without direction. You do not panic.
You do not assume that your purpose for entering the room has ceased to exist. You do not assume that the object you came to retrieve has vanished from reality. You simply acknowledge that you have lost the thread. You have forgotten the script. This is exactly what happens when you fall into a state of worry regarding your goals. You have momentarily forgotten who you become in the later chapters of your own biography. The noise of the current scene has become so loud that it drowns out the quiet certainty of the ending. When you view doubt as amnesia, it changes your reaction to it. You stop fighting it.
You stop trying to force yourself to be positive. You realize that you are simply suffering from a lapse in recall. The sensory data of the present world is aggressive. It is bright and loud and demands your attention. It creates a cognitive interference that blocks your access to the memory of your success. The biology of this is straightforward. Your brain is wired to prioritize immediate survival. It focuses on the lion in the bush rather than the feast next week. When your bank account looks low, or a relationship ends, or a door closes, your brain highlights these events as immediate threats. It flushes your system with cortisol and narrows your focus to the problem at hand. In this biological panic, you forget the larger timeline. You forget that this crisis is merely a plot point in the middle of the book. If you were rereading a biography of a historical figure you admire, you would not panic when reading about their early struggles. You know they succeed because you know history. You know that their poverty in Chapter 3 is necessary for their character development in Chapter 5. You do not doubt their success because you have the memory of their entire life in your hands. You must apply this same detachment to your own timeline. When the fear rises, do not treat it as a signal that you are off the path. Treat it as a signal that you have forgotten the destination. You have let the immediate environment induce a state of forgetfulness. The remedy for amnesia is not hope. It is a reminder. You must look at the script in your pocket again. You must deliberately re-enter the emotion of done. You do not need to convince the world to give you what you want. You need to remind yourself that you already have it. Stop trying to attract a solution to your problem. That frames the solution as something outside of you that is currently missing. Instead, focus on remembering the resolution. Recall the relief you feel after the problem is solved. Recall the texture of the life that follows this challenge. Every time you feel the constriction of anxiety, tell yourself that you have simply walked into a room and forgotten why you are there. Pause. Breathe. Let the immediate noise settle. Wait for the memory of your future to return. It is always there, waiting for you to look away from the mirror and remember the face that is waiting for you on the other side of time. Chapter 10. The Certainty of Yesterday. Consider the absolute weight of yesterday. Think about what you ate for breakfast this morning, or the conversation you had with a colleague last week. Notice how those events settle in your mind. There is no anxiety attached to them. There is no desperate grasping or frantic hope. You do not close your eyes and wish for yesterday to have happened. You simply know it did. It is a cold fact. It is heavy and immovable, like a stone in your pocket. This is the feeling of certainty. It is a calm and neutral acceptance of reality. Now contrast that heavy silence with the noise of tomorrow. When you look forward, you usually feel a vibration of nervousness. You feel the gap between where you are and where you want to be. You hope, you strive, you calculate probabilities. This is the fatigue of the chase,
we spoke of earlier. The moment you start chasing something, you acknowledge that you do not have it. You reinforce the separation. You tell your brain that the objective is distant and uncertain. This creates a psychological gap that fills with doubt and fear. To bridge this gap, you must attempt a radical inversion of your timeline. You must stop trying to attract a future event and instead start remembering it as if it were a past event. This is not about magic or bending the laws of physics. It is about bending your own psychology to break the paralysis of performance anxiety. Imagine for a moment that your success is not a destination you are trying to reach.
Imagine instead that it is a location you have already visited. You are not a traveler looking at a map and wondering if the road is washed out. You are a traveler looking at a photograph of a place you lived in for years. The memory of that place is etched into your neural pathways. You know the smell of the air and the sound of the streets. You possess the memory of the future. When you operate from a state of remembering, you bypass the part of your brain that generates resistance. A memory does not trigger the fight or flight response. A memory does not ask permission to exist. It is already there. By framing your goal as a memory, you trick your nervous system into relaxing. You stop projecting the energy of neediness. Neediness repels. Certainty anchors. Think of an actor who has memorized a script so perfectly that they no longer think about the lines. They can simply be in the moment. They are not worried about what comes next because the end of the scene is already written. It is inevitable. They are just walking the path that leads there. You must adopt this same relationship with your own life. The script is in your pocket. The ending is not a question mark. It is a period. When you wake up in the morning, do not ask yourself what you need to do to achieve your desire. That implies it is missing. Instead, ask yourself how you remember the day going. Treat the day as a history lesson of a victory that has already occurred. Move through your tasks with the specific gravity of someone who has already won. This shift changes how you handle obstacles. If you are trying to get somewhere, an obstacle is a wall that stops you. But if you are remembering a journey you have already completed, then an obstacle is just a detail in the story. It is a plot point you recall with a smile because you know you got past it. You know you survived. You know you succeeded. The obstacle loses its power to terrify you because in your mind it is already in the rearview mirror. This is the certainty of yesterday applied to the potential of tomorrow. It removes the frantic vibration of desire and replaces it with the solid hum of knowing. You are not hoping for the sun to rise. You remember that it rises. You rely on the mechanics of the solar system without emotional turmoil. You must rely on the mechanics of your own cause and effect with the same indifference. Stop leaning forward into the wind of the future. Lean back into the chair of the past. Let the feeling of done wash over you. The anxiety fades when the timeline collapses. You are no longer becoming. You are simply recalling who you have always been. The future is just a memory waiting for you to catch up to it. Closing the book. We have finally arrived at the last page. Think of that specific feeling you get when you finish a great novel. You close the cover and set it down on the table. The story is complete, and the ink is dry. This is exactly how you must treat your own timeline. You aren't frantically scribbling in the margins anymore, or hoping the plot works out in your favor. Instead, you are simply walking through scenes that have already been written. The anxiety of the chase dissolves because you know how the chapter ends. You aren't hoping for a resolution. You are waiting for the physical world to align
with a certainty in your mind. This is the ultimate shift in perspective. You move from the desperate energy of wanting to the calm assurance of remembering. The heavy lifting is over, and the decision is made. All that is left to do now is to let the days play out and watch the events unfold exactly as you recall them.